Then a carnival came into town. A little oh my god. Welcome back, my lovely cultists, and greetings to all those not yet initiated. I am Hannah, the girl with far too many skeletons in her closet and secrets in the attic. And today, I'll share one of them with you. But you must promise not to tell anyone, okay? You promise? 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 I have hands! Hooray! Now I can properly facepalm at all the cringe of the internet. On a more serious note though, I have to apologize for my long absence. Somehow, despite all the likes, comments, and subscribes powering the protective circle, the algorithm Shoggoth managed to get out. So I've been sort of busy trying to stop its rampage through the streets, lock it back up, and go through the long process of wiping everyone's memory of the incident. Yeah. Don't worry about all that lost time in your memory. Everything's fine. There was no Shoggoth on the roof. Still, I don't really know how it happened. It's like someone actually let it out or something. Oh well, I probably shouldn't worry about it too much. Today's story is part 2 in the continuation of the Tales of Barry, the totally not evil shapeshifter barbarian. If you haven't watched the previous video, go do that first so you can get the whole story. It'll be linked in the description below and up here in the corner? If I can figure out how that works. Many thanks to Reddit user Starry-Gaze for allowing me to share your story. Today's story is titled Bloody Barry's Whining Episode. Back again with another story about Barry. This one more recent. Same cast as in my last post, save for the most part our wizard who left for personal reasons. So quite a while after the last post, a good 5 or 6 sessions have gone by, and Barry has been violent but manageable. The occasional suggestion of wanton murder, getting, quote, lost in a forest while the player was absent for a few sessions. They may or may not have privately told me they wanted to jerk off into a bush for no reason upon their return? What? Why? But now the party has direction again. Hooray! They're heading to the central continent, where Barry's former kingdom is, to try and get some more information on a necromancer they were hunting. All is good. The party, on their way there, stop at a port town where they find an old legend of a ghost known as Moaning Mary. They set out to put her to rest, and have a nice few sessions of RP and detective-style investigation. There was a chance for them to take on an old naval soldier who now bums around town, since he was the one who murdered the girl out of jealousy. But the party resolved it peacefully, led him to the girl's fiancé, an old naval captain, who promptly used her experience to punish him. Barry was less than pleased. See, Barry wanted to get into a fight. After multiple sessions of RP and investigation, they were feeling pent up, and wanted to go into a blood-raged event. This chance was of course deprived of them as a result of stellar roleplay on behalf of Hawk and Hare, who both took to the detective mission with great exuberance. Then a carnival came into town. A little advertisement here, a little shadowy figure messing up the performance on purpose there, and the party was hooked. Since I'm a newer DM, I was using this all as a setup for a small dungeon I was going to try and run, using the circus as a setup for it. Hawk, Brew, Hare, and Barry are all excited. Hare and Brew especially, since their characters had never seen a carnival and were hyped to try all the junk food and play all the games. Then the fire dancer's wife went missing. A Yuan-Ti pureblood woman who seemed to have up and vanished. The party starts looking, finds some other Yuan-Ti trying to convince her to come with them, and hijinks ensue. The party manages to scare them off. The woman shakes it off and tries to refocus on her upcoming performance, which the party is invited to. The show comes and the Yuan-Ti from earlier attack. Initiative is rolled and combat starts. Now, it's at this point that my plan had been sprung, since the Yuan-Ti and purebloods have some light magical abilities, namely the spell Suggestion. So I get the idea to have them not fight in this first stage, and instead try and throw the players off, and make off with the fire dancer's wife. 2 players fail the save and are given simple instructions. Hare is told, give your friend a hug and grapple them, and is directed to their closest ally, being Hawk. Barry, meanwhile, is told, leave this place and leave us be. Simple, non-life-threatening, and allows us to move on quickly. This apparently set Barry off. Of course, Hare wasn't happy either, and tried to use the fact that Hawk had just gotten a special armor that allowed them to dish some minor damage on a reaction, homebrew item I gave him since he was having some trouble as our main tank doing damage, to say that this would cause them minor harm and thus Suggestion wouldn't be able to function. Oh man, that is some excellent loophole logic. Kudos to Hare. I made a half ruling saying they could try to roll then, but if they bungled it, they would have to obey the command, and on a success, they would avoid it through convincing themselves it would hurt and shake the spell. I wasn't even going to use it to hurt them, but since they brought it up, I made the ruling on the fly. Barry, meanwhile, both before and throughout all of this discussion, was steaming. He had decided to complain loudly and frequently throughout the entire fight until he got to attack things again, because he couldn't do anything, citing,
"First fight in a long time and I can't even do anything. This is Boldrek. Why isn't there a follow-up save to shake the spell?"
And that was a fair point. I figured I might be willing to homebrew in a save like it did for Hare, until Barry kept going. They just would not stop whining. I get it. You wanted to get into a fight. That's great, and I get it. But after the first 8 minutes of non-stop whining, which is keeping this issue open to discussion and derailing the game, I feel like you should pocket the issue and discuss it later, especially when you're interrupting others' turns. Then I broke, and I just straight up told them, look, this is only the first part of tonight's planned session. I also have a dungeon where there will be plenty of fights. Should be fun and easy. I thought that would do it. Nope. They went on to complain about not being able to do anything for another 30 minutes. Like real life, half an hour of just whining, interrupting combat, and trying to start a discussion at the table overturning the spell's rulings because they were Boldrek. I told them time and again that the spell didn't say anything about distance. Hare suggested following the enemies, since they were kidnapping the target through an exit. And they can't attack, so they can follow them no problem. Finally, I was showing signs of exhaustion. About 2 hours in, when I had tried everything else and just couldn't take it anymore, I snapped at Barry a bit. Why are you still on this? We are literally going to have a mini-dungeon right after. I was never planning on this being the only fight, just the first phase.
Oh, well, why didn't you say so?
Excuse me for a moment. What the hell, Barry? It was at that point I realized that they had just been complaining without listening to anything I or any of the other players had been saying the entire time. I didn't have the energy to deal with them. And at this point, even the other players were kind of coming around to my rulings because they were fair. They followed the rules of the spells, and they had easy outs if anyone would just think about the exact wording and find loopholes, which they did. Barry just didn't listen to any of that. It kind of sounds like Barry was off in their own little world, though I have to admit that I've never quite run into something like this before. So I called the session early. I was tired and exasperated and could not find the energy to go for the remaining 2 or so hours that we normally play for. And right after Barry, after pulling on an "Oh, well, I'm so sorry, please forgive me" voice, which I'm almost positive they use whenever they think they've ticked someone off to seem more innocent and apologetic, had knocked a wheel off the getaway vehicle, I was just done. I couldn't. But we aren't done yet. Oh no, not by a long shot. But once again, Barry's antics have given me a headache, even in retrospect. So I'll save the dungeon story for next time. Thanks for reading, and sorry if any of you are getting annoyed with this too. TLDR. Player gets annoyed by lack of combat after a few roleplay sessions, complains when they get suggestion cast on them during combat, and derail the session for nearly an hour while doing so. P.S. Sorry if my call on this was a bad one. I admit I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with weird situations like this. I can definitely understand your exhaustion, OP, and why you ended the session early. Honestly, I probably would have too. As for whether this was a bad call or not, I don't think so. And actually, for a fairly new DM, I feel OP handled it pretty well. I think the idea they had was a really cool one. But then again, that's because I know what they had planned. If I were to look at this from the player's perspective, itching for some combat after a few roleplay heavy sessions, I'd probably be pretty frustrated too. Now, I'm not sure how experienced Barry is with RPGs, but I know that in that situation, I would probably logic out that this was only the beginning of the session, and so this whole thing was probably some sort of setup the GM was doing. I thought the on-the-fly ruling was pretty good, too. Instead of just outright railroading and saying, "No, you can't do that," OP was willing to give them the chance to overcome the suggestion, as well as working with the Fairy Fu-style loophole logic. And I'm sure OP would have found a creative way to work with the destruction of the wheel of the getaway vehicle if they hadn't already been so drained from trying to get through to Barry. Have you ever had a player that just wouldn't listen? Or have a different way that you would have handled the situation? Let me know down in the comments. Likes, comments, and subscribes helps keep the algorithm shoggoth locked away, and from me having to erase more people's memories. As long as someone doesn't let it out. Maybe I should put in additional security in the basement. I'll have to give that some thought. But for now, it's time to say goodnight. And I should probably get some ice for this before it turns into a lump. Until next time, my wonderful cultists, when the stars align. This chance was, of course, deprived of who both took to the Oh man, that is some excellent loophole logic. They would just not. They just not. They just not? What? Maybe Maybe I should put in additional security in the basement. God damn it, hand.